Okay guys, welcome back. The last lecture we went over the advanced SQL. We start looking how to access SQL from the programming language. Right now we have a Java or Python or whatever, and you need to access the database, your data. You are going to perform somehow, you need to connect your database in order to retrieve the data. And we mentioned this one last time. We have when we need to use, say, access data, for example, SQL from programming language. Why? And the reason behind this one, or someone maybe said, is it enough to use SQL by itself? No, it's not enough. What if I assume that I expect from you to design the following? You have like web interface or web application where you require the user to do what? To access the data. So there is a web page, login, you collect information, user ID and password, for example. Then after that, you're going to check whether the user is allowed to access the system or not. Then after that, you're going to display the next page and system. I cannot do this one using SQL. I cannot come up with a GUI and you have like some component, and so we cannot do this one. We easily do this one using what? Using Java or whatever programming language. So we're going to have an interface which allows me to collect the information from the user. Then after that, I'm going to do what? I'm going to just write or execute to say SQL query in the background. Okay? So that's one thing or main thing. There's sometimes we cannot write a simple function or simple command to query using SQL to allow me in order to handle, say, image processing, something like this. Okay? We've said last time we do have like two different types in order to implement or approach access SQL from the general purpose programming language. It might be static or embedded SQL or dynamic. The dynamic one that we start looking at this one. Let's start with the embedded one or the static one. You are familiar with the PHP admin, right? PHP language. When you try to inject your codes inside, we usually do what? We have like PHP tag and can be inserted inside HTML, right? Page in order to allow me to execute a PHP code or whatever. The same thing. So in the middle here, was not gonna be like, it's like a special code, like copy and paste one specific code that belongs to the PHP language can be inserted or embedded inside the HTML language. The same thing here. So here my code is going to be Java code, for example, or whatever programming language. And inside my code, I'm going to do what? I'm going to inject, say, for example, this part, for example, you can say from this part up to here. This is going to be SQL. Exact. So we have like, you can use the tag or you can use, for example, begin. You're going to see later. Begin SQL. Well, let's see. Yeah, I think that not begin, execute, yeah. I'm going to say execute SQL and end SQL. And inside between this block, the system is going to say, I don't know anything about this one. Here we're going to write SQL query commands the normal way that we did. Select a star from where or update or whatever. Okay? So it looks like you embedded or insert the exact SQL or static SQL query here. This, when you run this one, it's going to be not in the compile time, in interpreter time, in processing time. In the compile time, not in the running time. The dynamic one is different. Allow me to collect data, generally speaking from, let's say, and I can create SQL on running time. That's what we're doing right now. So inside this one, so when you write SQL query, you're not going to say select a star from it. No, you're going to somehow, for example, you're going to, as we did last time, we connected the database. Then after that, we create a statement. Then after that, we execute the statement. So here, that's what we're doing here. How can you do that? They have many standard connections, many of them. As example of this class, we're going to use a JDBC, okay, which allows me standard connecting SQL to connect the SQL database and perform queries and updates and etc. Okay, sorry. So I showed you last time how can you use JDBC. I guess let's go over this one here. We have many sections. This is the way how can you perform that. By the way, when you use the Python, you can use PsychoPG, which is one of the famous, one of the common, okay, or most popular PostgreSQL database. Doesn't mean adapter. Doesn't mean this is the only one. There's a many. And this is, by the way, one great website. If you want to learn more, even after the class, I suggest you to go over this one in more details. So this one is Postgres tutorial. Either going to be with the Python, and I think they have I'm not sure they have a Java or not, but this one, if you go to the up here, the main web directory, or the site that you have, I'm going to give you more details about the Postgres. How can I perform insertion, deletion, etc. Whatever we cover in the class with more. Okay? Here, just focus on how can you work with a Python with more details. So again, in the Python, you're going to use cycle, pg2, or whatever, any popular one. Okay? Good. So when you start connecting, JDBC or connected database, first, you have to connect to the database. Establish a connection. So this is your program, and this is the database. Okay? Stored in your computer, database system, your code. When you try to insert here, you cannot directly access this one. I'm going to use a JDBC. And JDBC, they have some command, which allow me first to establish a connection. When I establish connection, now I can send my statement, which they say query, execute, and the database can be returned the result. Once you send that execute, you have to find a way in order to prepare the statement. I have a special command I need to follow, or steps allow me to create statement, prepare. When you say create statement, that means what you wanted to execute. What kind of command you're going to perform? Query, or you're going to update, modify, or DDL, data definition language command. For example, you want to create a table, or you're going to modify the table. Whatever you want to do, you have to prepare a statement after you establish a connection. Then send the request of the command that we have. It's going to be executed. Then after that, you're going to return the result. The problem here, whatever the result is going to be returned, it's going to be the result set. Huh? It's going to be a table as a result set. It depends, for example, SQL query in this case. Yeah, I know if you try to perform create table, insert here, or insert some tuples, the result is not going to be the result set. It's going to be the number of tuples that has been affected. So assume that it's going to be table as a result here, or the result set. Select a star from whatever, where, whatever. Here you need to find a way. Here we have different environments. Here we're going to work with the tables, attributes, etc. Here we work with something different. So here I'm going to store this one is what's called the result set, which the way allow me in order to handle the data that I receive from the database. Then within the result set, you're going to see, as you saw last time, we're starting extract the data in the way that our Java code or Python code can understand, can handle that. Okay? So we need to connect. Then after that, shipping or create a SQL statement to the database in order to execute here, use a statement. Then after that, of course, you need to handle the exception, resource management, retrieve the result to the result from the query. Then after that, we do have, then after you can display it, etc. Right? We are going to look at different way to how to prepare the statement or shipping the statement. I show you the naive way, the simple way. Then we're going to take a look how to perform one more advanced way or better way. It's called the prepared statement, which allow you in order to use a placeholder in order to create a statement here, which is going to be more efficient, better than the normal statement or traditional way to create a statement because it's secure. I'm going to talk about the SQL injection attack, and this is the reason why we need to have to prepare the statement. Then after that, just to give you an idea, there's a different way. It's another statement is called callable statement, which allow you in order to call procedure or function. We're going to talk about this one today. Sometimes you need to extract the metadata features. For example, I need to find the schema of the data, etc. For the programming language where I don't have the schema, I'm not going to create the schema of the programming language. It's not going to be hard-coded here. So we can use some commands in order to tell me, for example, give me information about the metadata, or data about the data, or the schema, or the database schema, what you wanted to know. The structure, I give you the structure. A schema, I give you the schema. What the data type, each attribute, I can get the information. For example, you can specify what's the primary key, what's the foreign key. Yes, you can get this information. Then after that, take about the other feature we can extract here. Yeah, we're gonna see that how can you perform a recursive query, and you can perform, for example, create a function, methods, and etc. So anyway, we connect the database. I showed you this one last time, and this is the command that we have. Actually, this one. If you take a look to the files that download to the Blackboard, you're going to see this one is going to be take a look. Usually you write the name of the file, either at the bottom or the top. So if you want to execute this one, this is the name of the file that we need to execute. Okay, connect. In the connect the database, you need to provide what? You have to tell me what's your URL, where the data is going to be stored. Local, yes. Specific folder, yes. Where exactly? Local, that means local host, or maybe remote, that means give me the IP address where the data can be stored. Right now, the database is going to store it here. I'm going to use the JDBC, Postgres. If you use different driver, that means you need to double check in order to update this one. Right now we use the JDBC. This is the way how to perform that. I will show you later during the class how can you use the Postgres, the Python in order to access the data with the cycle BG. Localhost, the name of the database that you wanted to connect to. Okay, you must be created there. What's the name of the user? The traditional, normal way to have a user, we call this one Postgres. What's the default user? You can't create another user. You can create user 1, user 2, whatever names, you can specify the access right to the user. You can say this user can access the data, can perform insertion, deletion, and etc. Okay? And we do have what? The password associated with this user. Again, the default user is the Postgres. And the password can be whatever password. Of course, this is not the actual password you're going to use. I try to avoid to hard coding the password here. Right now it's okay for this class project, but there is another way. You need to figure out how can we try to avoid hard coding the password of the database user inside your code. I connected the database. I want to display this one just to give you a message. Is it successfully created or not? Connected or not? This is a good idea to start connect the database, and after that, start to work. Then we looked at last time how to create a statement. I established a connection. Now we need to create a statement because you need to come somehow to ship whatever command you need to execute over there to the server, or to say the database in order to execute. This is the naive way to create a statement. You have a statement object with a class, you create a state, and this one uses the connection that you just created, this object, dot create statement. This allows me to create specific statement. Okay, now how can you perform? Actually, we do have a many statements. Right now, this is a symbol statement. We can use prepared statement instead of statement. I'm going to talk about this one in a few slides. In a few minutes. Or you can call it, say, a stored procedural function. Okay, a stored procedure actually. So in order to execute the statement, it depends on your command that you will perform. What you need to do? I wanted to retrieve data. I need to execute a query. So in this case, you have to execute a query. What you wanted to do? I wanted to modify data, insert, delete, whatever. So in this case, you have to execute update. So you have 2 different commands you need to execute. Query, execute query. So it's going, in this case, I expect from you to retrieve data. You're going to perform select in this case. So somehow you're going to return the result set for this query, then you need to handle the result set, right? Then after that, the execute query, which allow me to what? You're going to perform insert, delete, update, create table, whatever. Okay? So here it depends what kind of command you're going to be executed. And also action, and also the return value is going to be different from what kind of command. Again, for execute query, it's going to be like a result set which is going to represent a table or a relation. That's what we said last time, right? And for the execute update, here I expect from you to do it. To perform insert, delete, modify, update, tuple, or to say attributes, right? When you perform this one, the system is going to return how many tuples has been affected. Okay, how many tuples have been affected for this operation? For example, you insert 3 tuples, the result is going to be 3. You update maybe 3 tuples, the result is going to be 3. Okay, you delete 5 tuples, the result is going to be 5. There is a number of tuples. For the DDL, with the data definition language, when you create a table, etc., the result is going to be what? Always 0. If the result value is 0, when you create a table, you know this was successfully managed to create a table out there. So you can say the table has been successfully created and etc. Okay. If not, it's going to be 0. That means you need to handle this one differently. Okay. You need to figure out how can we handle this one. So this is the way how to handle the error message that you have in your code. So when you execute, for example, update, I'm going to say insert. This, for example, of course, now we create a connection, statement object. I can use a statement object now, start to send whatever it depends the command that you need to execute. If you want to execute a query or update a query, the input, the argument of this method is like a string. And the string that contains what kind of SQL query or say command you wanted to execute there. So generally speaking, either you're going to write this one as string here, or maybe you're going to say string, for example, SQL, whatever command equal this data, this information here. And here when I say a statement, for example, dot execute update, I'm going to say SQL, and the SQL is going to be like the command that I want to execute. Okay? Now, if you this one sometimes execute this one, maybe you're gonna return, for example, integer x, whatever the value, if you wanted to get the return result. Here, when you execute a query, now we're gonna select something. You see here, I'm gonna modify, insert, whatever. Here, we're gonna retrieve data. That means in this case, I'm gonna say execute a query. When you execute this one, the result is gonna be entered in the object called result set. Okay, what's the result set? We talk about this one. Before I go over this one, let me remind you with a try with the resource. Of course, you know that as a coding, when you code anything, you need to make sure that any resource you use, you need to close. Yeah? You need to get rid of them. This one is going to be the try with the resource, will allow me to do what? Open this one with a try. Once the try done, executed, automatically going to be the object going to be has been, just say, created to be closed automatically. Good. You need to find how to handle the SQL exception and the exception, the normal exception programming language. Good. So this is for the result set. When you took the result set, we said here what? It's like a special data or structure or a special object which allow me in order to handle the data from the query. Let's talk about this one here a little bit here. Give me a second. I need just to share the whiteboard. Then, so when you perform the SQL statement, you say select a star. You say select star from R and assume R contains, for example, ABC attributes. Okay? Something like this. We have to 1 to whatever data. When you perform this operation, you execute the query. The result is going to be what? I put this one, for example, the result set RS, just for simplicity, is equal to what the RS? The RS is like an interface or an object. It represents the result set of the database query here. Is going to maintain a cursor, let's say a pointer, okay, to the current row of the result set. Actually, at the beginning, when you perform this one, it's going to have a pointer to the before the first tuple of this relation. This means the result is going to be ABC. This RS is going to have a pointer here, and before the first tuple in this relation. Before, right? Now, in order to start access the data here, you need to perform the following here. You have to iterate, you have to go to jump to the next tuple, or to say dot next. What does that dot next? Dot next is going to say, okay, you can jump to the beginning of the first one. So again, I do have a pointer. It's going to point to the before the first tuple. I need to find a way in order to iterate. When I say iterate, that means you need to navigate my way and go tuple by tuple, starting extracting my data. Now this does not relate to the database. Now we need to handle this one for the Java. How to handle this one using JDBC. Different database management, so different code, say programming language has different way to perform that. I'm gonna give you an example how Java do that, and how can you do this one using the Python. Then the rest depends on you, whatever programming language you can use. You need to try to figure out how to use that. Okay, so to iterate over the result set, I'm gonna use what is called the dot next method. When you say, for example, rs dot next, okay, method. This one again, the first time you call this one, you're gonna say, okay, now I'm gonna move the pointer not before the beginning. The pointer is gonna point to the beginning of the first tuple. Now you are ready to extract the data that's stored in this tuple. Great. So if you said dot next again, jump to the beginning to the next tuple. Dot next again, it's gonna jump to the beginning of the third tuple. Add a tuple. Okay. Once you call this one at the beginning, jump to the beginning of the first tuple. Now you're starting iterating. You need to extract the data. How can I extract the data? I'm going to extract the data using the getter. We have many get. Okay, so calling one or more to say of the many get whatever method. We're going to see it depends on the data type here. First, I can say, for example, in order to return the first one or the data you stored, I can say rs dot what. Well, I use this pointer. Now the pointer pointed to the first tuple. I need to retrieve what? A, B, C. All right? Which one you need to retrieve first? I need to retrieve the A. So I'm going to rs.get with the data type of A. In order to be safe, you can use get the string. Then after that, you convert the data type, whatever you want to the code. If you want, of course, I'm going to say string value or val A equal. I'm going to say rs.get string. And here between two parentheses, I'm going to say A. Okay? If B, for example, integer, I can say, for example, integer val B equal rs.get integer B, and etc. Okay? There is one thing here I need to add here. What if I don't know? Can I do, if you want to retrieve a specific column in the this one, it's gonna be retrieve the data for this column in the count tuple, because I use rs right now because rs is gonna be at the beginning first tuple. If you call this one again, it's gonna jump to the next tuple. It's gonna start retrieving the data for the next tuple. One thing I need to add. What if I'm not sure what the attribute name is gonna be, especially if we have, say, select. Assume this one, select count star from, I don't know what happened, let's say from R. When you return this one, so the RS is going to be a pointer, in this case is what? A tuple, table that contains, I don't know what the value is going to be here, maybe count a star or whatever. So I'm not sure what the attribute name here. So in this case, we can use the column position. So we can in this case say rs.get string between, let's say, give me the first column. So here in this case, we can do this one. Either gonna say get A or gonna get string 1, the first column. Get integer B or get me 2. Either is gonna be fine. By the way, the location does start being 1 and 2. So either give me the position or give me the attribute name of the name of the column in order to get the value. Clear? That's what we do. So I will put this one in the rs.next in the while loop. While rs.next and start reading the data, and once you read the data, let's see, Joe, I don't know what you plan to do with the whatever you fetch from the data. Okay? So far so good, hopefully. So one thing here I need to add, it's allow us in order to handle the null value, which is an interesting way using the rs of the result set. Give me just a second, I'm going to jump to the right slide. It's here, that's what we talk about right now. We have a cursor, it's going to be like iterate, allowing me in order to iterate over every single let's say the result set that you just received. You can use get whatever string that's work with any data type, or you can use the get float, double, integer, whatever data type that we have that you know for the class that we have. Here, yeah, I need just to add one part here. When you use the .next, as you mentioned, it's going to be next tuple at the beginning of the next tuple. At the beginning, it's going to be point before the first tuple or row that we have here. You can, as you mentioned, get in the results field either the name, if you know the exact name of the attribute, or based on the location. They are equivalent. Okay? So I'm going to say from where I get the name of the attribute? From the select statement that you perform. You can select, for example, A, B, C, star, whatever. Yeah? That information here. Can we handle the null value? Yes. We have interesting thing, one value, which is called, for example, assume that the result set that we have get value of A, and you need to check the value of A whether it's going to be null value or not. If the value of A null value, I need to do something. Okay, you need to handle this. The beauty thing using the iterating using the result set allow me to check the last value that was right. Right now, I take a just get X with a value A. So you can check, you say, if the R set or the result set dot was null. What does that mean? The was null I'm going to do what? Method of the result set interface determines whether the last column read had a null value. If they had null value, it depends on you what you want to or planning to do here. So the last value is if this one null, now for example, got null value, I want to handle, I want to put the A equal to 0, for example, because I cannot store the value A equal null value. Do you see that? That's interesting, right? So you have to have full control about your data. Anyway, this example too, as we showed this one last time, allow us in order to get the data. For example, select the department name as average salary per department from the instructor, go by the department name. You see that this is the statement that you created, okay? And here the be string. You have to connect. You have to establish a connection, object with a connection. Then now, what's this? This is the retrieve data. I'm going to use execute query, and the result must be in the result set. Then now I need to handle the result set. Why there is a when they say result set dot next, it's going to be pointed before the first tuple. When I say dot next, it's going to be jump to the next. And keeping jump to the, every time you call this one, jump to the next. If there's no more tuple, this one is going to be evaluated to the false if they reach the end of the file. So at the end, if you reach this one in the file, it's going to be false. So it's going to be get out of the while loop, which is going to be great to us. Okay, and this is just I retrieve the data. I just print out. And this is depends on what you're working. This one interested, by the way. I use column 2. Why use 2? Because I'm not sure what the name of the attribute is going to be here. Is average salary. What the attribute name is going to be with the result set? I can't tell. I'm not sure, actually. It depends on the database system that you work with. Maybe it's going to be average salary, or maybe not. So it's better to use the column in this case. It's going to be perfect. Or if you set, for example, as average underscore salary. Oh, yes, in this case, you can use that average underscore salary as attribute name. Make sure the attribute name is going to be as a string. Okay? This is an example to get information from the instructor. Select count, in this case, the number of instructor. So the result is going to be only 1. Since you know that the count, in this case, aggregate function, is going to compute the number of tuples, and it's going to achieve only the value 1 tuple. Yeah, I know that for sure, only 1 tuple. When I say there's no need to put this one in the while loop. Okay, I say set, for example, whatever the result set that I have, dot next, jump to the beginning of the first 1 tuple, which is going to be give me the count, then give me get injured and 1, the first column, since we have 1 column, the first column, and you can display the result. Okay? Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any question. So here, just get querying the data, okay? And in this case, I need to get, for example, the ID, name, the department, salary from the instructor. You see the same structure looks like. Once you have to connect, establish statement, create a statement, execute it, put this one in the result set. You need to handle extract the data from the result set. Can be the same structure that we did here exactly here. If you try to update, here's this interesting file. Example. Assume that you're gonna perform what? I'm gonna, let's say, create table. And this table is gonna have, let's say, personal info, which contains the following information. So you see that they create, this looks like here, the SQL statement, the statement that it's gonna be like a SQL statement, the same one that you're gonna be executed. You can write this one in one line, on different lines, it depends on you. Create table if not exist, and personal info. And in this case, gonna have the ID, name, and agent address. Okay, and you use the ID as a primary key. And this is the way how can you create my table? Great. Then now open the connection, establish object, create an object statement here. Then after that, the next step, I need now to perform the statement. I put this one here just the way to show you that the result, if the remember when you said when you try to create a table to create data definition language. The result is going to be 0 if successfully create the table. Otherwise, we fail to create that. Okay? So you can say if, for example, the statement .execute update. Why I said execute update? Because it's not query. I'm not going to expect to retrieve data. I'm going to perform this update, modification, insertion, or create tables, etc. Schema, alter schema, etc. You can't create that. So it's going to be update. Execute update. So if the value is going to be 0, that means we successfully create a table, otherwise we fail to create a table and etc. Make sense? We create a table. Then after that, I want to fill the table with data. Okay, when you update the data of the table of data, I need to perform the following. Insert into the table, and we have a different way to do that. Okay, this is one insertion. I need to insert 3 tables. Okay, when you insert this one, this command, now connections, create a statement. I need just to add one thing here. By default, when you talk about the transaction, we mentioned this one before, right? He said it's got the Postgres of the most database management system are auto commit. That means when you type one command or one query, you click enter or execute, the system gonna the effect of this command of this query gonna be permanent. It's gonna be reflected to the disk. Okay, you can use what is called make sure that I'm going to disable this property. Don't automatically commit every single query that I'm going to execute or type unless I've said. Until I said do it or not. Okay, so it looks like we have a transaction. So here I said the connection that you have set auto commit false. That means when you create, for example, execute this command, this one is going to be from insertion, for example, insert into this data that we just create a table, these tuples, okay? So yeah, those are my favorite place, by the way. I'm moving California, Georgia, and Illinois. Who knows next year where we're gonna be? Okay. Anyway, so this, I mean, just an example. Allow us to perform how will it perform the transaction. So I send this one, execute this one. Do you think the change has been modified to the disk? Not yet. Now I say the connection.commit. When you say .commit, that means now the change is going to be reflected to the disk. Now if you try to access data, this p-info relation is going to fill with this data. If you said here instead the commit, I say back. Oh, the system gonna say it's gonna be what? You try insert, but when you said roll back, this means it's gonna be undone the action that you have. So it's not gonna be these data is not gonna be inserted. So it depends on you actually. It depends what kind of command that you try to achieve, and also depends what you're planning to do and how could you control your data. Okay. Here I get information of data that I have. So you see the same thing, now execute a query because it selects star from the file that you have, and you want to sort the data based on the name, and here you're going to give you the data, and you see that I'm trying to have different ways in order to access the data, and different way in order to mention how can you, mention which column you need to access. Either I'm going to use the position of the column, or you can use, for example, the attribute name that's going to be here, okay, if you know that. Now let's take a look at the prepared statement. Prepared statement something different here. Prepared statement allow you in order to create a statement in which some values are replaced by question mark. So now I can say, for example, I want to select all the data that associated for a specific instructor. So in this case, I want to build the following. I say select star from, let's say, instructor where the ID is equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For example, this data, right? That's what I'm planning to do. So I will ask, give me the ID. Then I need to create SQL statement. If I don't use the prepared statement, when you create this one using, let's say, the normal statement, so my SQL is going to be something like this. Yeah. Select the star from the instructor where. Then here you're going to say something like this, plus. Yeah, because this is a command, and you have a string, okay? And between this one, you have to give me what's the ID value, because this one must be between single quotes, okay? And here, give me what the ID, for example, my ID is equal this value, my ID. This is the way how to do this one. I don't like this one. I'm gonna show you why in a few slides. This is the weird way that I don't like it. So in the prepared statement, in order to create this one, I'm going to create a SQL statement, okay? And the only difference here, I'm going to say the ID is equal question mark, okay? Later, I'm going to provide you with the value of the ID. So it looks like I'm going to use a placeholder which specifies the actual data will be provided later. And this is for the security reason why you need to do this one. But in order to avoid the SQL injection attack, I will talk about this one in next 2 slides. Now, once you have the prepared statement, you create SQL statement. Now, when you said this is a prepared statement, you need to find a way how to fill substitute this question mark with the actual value. So later, before you execute this one, I'm going to say, I want to set somehow the first position. It might be you have multiple, let's say, placeholder. You can select, for example, from the instructor where the ID equals specific value and all the department equal whatever, and also you have many, let's say, placeholder. So you have many values, you need to pass them. Yeah. If you're familiar with Python, this is the same thing that we're doing in the Python prepared statement. We need to display the value. You have a print statement, you have like a placeholder inside the print statement. Then after that, you have to tell me what the first placeholder is going to be substituted by this value, and the second going to be substituted by that value added to it. Okay? So once you perform the question mark as a placeholder, you need to use the method. We're going to use a set, and set is going to have depends data type. For example, the first one here in this case it's going to be set char, for example, or bar char, or sorry, set string actually, because it's a char in this case. Remember the ID is going to be char in our data, or for example, if the ID is numeric value, set integer and etc. at that location. Then after we passing the value to the placeholder, we can execute it. Okay, so this is how it looks like in the prepared statement. For example, I want to insert into the structure the value for values. This is the way how to build this one. You see the first, second, third, fourth. I'm going to use a prepared statement, not statement. Equal connection dot prepared statement. Of course, we do have the statement. I mean the connection first. Then after I can perform this operation. Okay, the rest. So when you set insert into structure value, you know the first one, the ID, the name, the salary, and the department. All right, this information of the department and the salary at the end. All right, how can you assign this information? I create prepared statement. Then after that, before execute this statement, in this case, it's going to be execute update. All right, before I execute update this statement, I need to do one thing. First, for the prepared statement, you need to fill this one with the data. I need to tell or pass the value to this to the question mark. Here you can say for the first one, the first question mark must we have this value, and I use set string. For the first one is a string, and this is the value. So it looks like here the value is going to be substituted with this value 88877, and the second one this with Alice, the name, and the third one, for example, enhance the department, and the fourth one is going to be 125. Oh, nice salary. Okay. Okay. When you execute update, that's the insertion going to be. These values going to be there as long as still you running your code. Okay, you didn't exit. So what if someone is going to say, okay, I'm going to insert, say, we have another instructor, her name is Alice, the same department, the same salary, but the ID is different. So in this case, if I said just prepared statement with the object that we have here, dot set string, the first one, that's the value 888. Did you change the rest? No. If we execute the update, so the last one gonna say it looks like the first one, we just modified the first here. So this statement, we can call it again, this interesting thing, and this is the value gonna be passed for the first one, gonna be ID 888. How about the name and the department and the salary? I didn't change this one, so I'm gonna use the same value that I passed in the previous step. So this is gonna be the insertion in the second step. Make sense? Why you need to perform that? I advise you when you work with database in general, you try to access the data, etc. You have to use a prepared state, whatever, regardless of any programming language, whatever programming language we're going to use. Why? Because you need to avoid what's called the SQL injection attack. Because in this case, the attacker may be going to try to inject malicious code inside this value if you use the normal statement. Let me show you the structure of the normal statement if you try to insert into the structure the ID name, the department name, and the salary. If I try to use a normal statement, that's the way how to perform that. This is the connection. It's going to be statement equal connection dot prepared statement, and the value is going to be something that insert into structure values. Here you have to use the ID. Why use double quotation here? Double quotation, that means this is string, right? It's going to be plus, I need to add the ID as a string because I need to concatenate the value that's an ID string into this string, right? That's what we're doing in Java. Why put this one between single quote? Because the value of the ID must be between single quote. So in this case, the ID if equal 888, I substitute the ID 88 and the 888, and this one will be between single quote. This is the way how to handle the string, right? The same for the name. The same for the department. And the salary, since it's not going to be single quote because it's not string, it's integer. Good. When you perform this operation here, the attacker can perform say inject any malicious code. The first one, I need to use escape character, yeah? What if you have the name have apostrophe in this case? Something like this. Haniel. How can you use this one? Oh, I need to use escape. Otherwise, if you use this one here, the system is going to be confused. I'm going to say the name is going to be O, and the ID is going to be, the name is going to be O, then the department is going to be Henry, then, oh, I'm confused. I have a lot of parameters, too many parameters. The main reason why I need to avoid this one because of the SQL injection attack. Okay? So the SQL injection attack, which one way in order to try to avoid here in general. Before that, just have example how to do this one. The same thing here. I'm going to try to retrieve the information for the specific department. I'm going to use a prepared statement. So here I'm going to use this question mark, and here when you call this one, I'm going to say create a prepared statement for the string that I have. Before I execute this one, I need to pass the parameter value to the parameter here. For the first, the second, the third, since we have only one, I can say set the string 1, and the instructor ID, which I have a variable, has a specific value. Okay? Now execute it, do the same thing normal way. Someone will say, why you need to perform while loop? Maybe, I mean, since the ID actually is the primary key, we don't expect that we're going to have a while loop. Yeah? We're going to have only one tuple in this case, right? We do have a duplicate value, but it doesn't hurt in this case. Back to the prepared statement as you mentioned. Why you need to use this one? Why you use this one here? Because it's going to help me in order to avoid the SQL injection attack. This is just a sample. I like this image. Exploits a mom, okay? So the mom is going to receive the call from the principal of the school that said, hey, there's a son at school where I have, as they say, some computer trouble. Okay, the first thing the mom, of course, for me, when they get to see call from the school, they said, is my child okay? Are they okay? Did he or does or whatever, did they break anything? So that's the first one. No, but what they said, they entered the student name into the database. And in the database, the student name is used, for example, select of something, or insert from the thing where the ID equal this one, or insert in the data, and the student name is going to be student name, and the name of the student, something like this, Robert. Okay, close the string, and use this one command, and the second command, drop the table student. This is one common SQL injection attack. We try to insert malicious code that can be translated into the query. Okay, so in this case, what happened? Instead the name of student, add the Robert, and I'm gonna drop or delete the table that contains all the student, and here double dash means ignore whatever we have after that. So in this case, they lost the information about the database of the student. Of course, we have some mechanism we can achieve. We can perform this one easy way. One of them use prepared statement. The prepared statement is going to take care of this one. It looks like we need to sanitize our data, okay, or input before you're going to execute that. Anyway, the SQL injection, that we select the star from the instructor with the name equal this value. The same thing that we got here. Select star from the student with the name of student equal this one. So if we enter a state or name equals something like this, this is as a string. So someone is going to insert this one. I will insert this one here. So the query is going to be select star from the instructor where the name is equal x, or y is equal y, or 1 equal 1. So this one always going to be evaluated to true for every single tuple, all right? So this allows us in order to get all the information from the instructor. You can do something if you have update. You need to update, for example, or maybe you can insert, instead you have a name equal x or y equal y. You can insert something like this. If you inject this one here to the system, so the system gonna say select the star from the instructor where the name is equal x, semicolon. There is another command, update the instructor, set the salary equal the salary plus what, 10,000. So you add 10,000 every single one in the system, or all instructor. I like this command. I wish if you can do this one. Just working, of course. Okay, of course, the way the prepared statement works differently. What you're going to do here, you're going to use, for example, this is the command. You're going to say, to go back here, this is how it works actually. They're going to say, in this case, this is a command. So I'm going to send this one, select this value to the system and say, those are the structure of the SQL that you want to perform. Then after that, when you perform the set, they said, please handle whatever type of data stored here as a data. Don't use them as a commands. So whatever you select to drop, whatever the system going to use them as an input. So all of them is going to be one input. So you cannot change the structure of the database. Also, sorry for the query. And this is why the prepared state works. Okay. So we talk about how can you update the data using the prepared statement. Okay. And this is the command that you're going to perform. Any question, by the way? So far, so good. So sometimes you need to have information about the data or the schema of the structure of the database that you have. Okay. Of course, when you work with the database or C or Java or whatever, we are not gonna, or my application is not gonna be aware of the database structure. I'm not gonna create a schema or store the schema inside the database. Oh, sorry, it's inside my file or the Java code. Okay. So sometimes, if the Java code wanted to know more information about the schema of the database, yes, we can perform this one. Okay. So, by the way, either you're gonna hard code in the schema, you're gonna say select a student ID, name, whatever from the data, whatever relation, specific relation where the ID, whatever equals specific value, or you can do something smart. You can perform somehow extract whatever schema you have in the data. You can extract the schema, then you can build your query based on the schema that we have, which is the one that we're gonna perform here. I'm gonna show you steps or ways how does JDBC you can use or commands or Java in order to extract information about the schema. Okay? In order to do that, I need to go over something. Okay, I'm going to talk about the catalogs, cluster, and etc. If you open your PG admin, you notice that in the left we have some commands, right? Give me a second, I will execute or launch the PG admin. In order just to go over this one, you see that in the left we have a different servers. It might we have a cluster. It depends on the database in general. Some of them have a cluster. Some of them use a catalog. Some use a schema. Some use a table, and etc. Okay. So here, if you take a look to the PG admin that we have here, you check that you have like server, and the server gonna have, for example, Postgres. Inside the Postgres, you have a database. Inside the database, if you have a specific database, you're gonna see a lot of things. You're gonna see, for example, catalog. Okay, you can see, for example, inside the catalog, you can see schema, for example, and you have a different schema. Inside this schema, you can see the tables. So the structure as following here. If you work with the database management system or any database, generally speaking, we do have what is called a cluster. What the cluster means here? And the cluster means that I'm not talking about the hardware. Okay, cluster, that's means multiple computers working together. No, generally speaking, the database cluster is referred to the fact that you can have multiple unrelated database, all of them can be run, okay, using the same Postgres server engine. Right now, when you launch your Postgres, now it looks like you have a Postgres server gonna running right now, based on whatever database that we have. You can have multiple databases are gonna running at the same time. Okay, then you can access them. Okay, so we can have a cluster. A cluster gonna have a catalog. Catalog is gonna be like a fancy word in order just to explain, like we have a collection of schema in the SQL environment. Okay, so the SQL might have 0 or more catalog. Catalog maybe contains one or more schema in general. Okay, you can get information about the catalogs if you go or choose the information schema, which allow you, like special structure of data or relation, which contains the views and domains of the information schema in more details. I'm not talking too much. The most important thing I want from you here, or simple thing, you can say we have a computer may have one or more cluster. Okay, a database server is a cluster. Okay, a cluster has a catalog, and the catalog can be used as a database in general. A catalogs maybe have a schema, many schema. The normal schema or the schema is the namespace of the table, okay, where the table can be stored here. Right now, we're using the public schema. If you check this one, we have the public schema. If you check the university database in the PG admin, you see that we do have the schema and we do have the schema public here. Okay, that's what we have here. And inside the schema might be for the same data, maybe have a different schema. You can generate or design or create another schema. Okay, many schemas. I will go back to see why the schema is important here. The schema is going to have the tables. Well, the table, now tables going to store the tuples, whatever all the information comes, then we can retrieve the data to store there. Okay? One thing here, I need to add here, why we need to have multiple schema. Why the database might have a multiple schema here. Okay? I think it's me just to share the PG admin so at least makes sense to see what I'm talking about here. So see this for the database that we have university, many database. A database is going to have to say many schema here. Okay, schema, see that one schema have a public. We can create another schema here. Let's say test inside this one. Yeah. So this schema might have what? You see that either going to have a public schema or you have a test. And the test schema is kind of this one. It contains nothing here. There is no table. Okay, because I didn't insert any table or create a table inside this one. So if you have more than one schema, that means you have to let the system tell, for example, which schema you need to perform access inside the university database. For the same database, we might have more than one schema, which you're going to see later when you graduate here. Sometimes you have multiple schema for the same database. In order to do what? In order to arrange, make the work easy to manage. If you have multiple programmers working with the same database, so we give them different schema, each of them use its own schema in order to not interrupt with the others. Okay? Then after that, we're going to run our code in the original schema. So, again, why we need a schema or different schema or use a schema here? The schema allows us, or schemas allow us to what? In order to organize the database objects. So table can be organized in logical groups to make them more manageable. And the second reason, or the most important reason, schemas allow or enable multiple users to use the one database without interfering with each other. For example, you access the database and you modify the structure of the database, one of them. This one is going to affect me because I'm doing something else. And this one maybe is going to be what? I use that old structure of the database. You see that? So here, just organize your work. In order to tell the system which schema I'm going to perform, or how can we tell which schema I'm here right now? Let me check. I think I can use select a schema. I'm here, let's say for, assume I'm here. Create this one. I'll open the query editor. Let me select current schema here and see whether it can give me something here. Oh yeah. I'm in the public. Yeah, so the public current schema that used here. Here, because I don't have data, so I cannot tell. So the default schema will be public. In order to access the data, etc., you have to tell me what the name of the schema. For example, if you want to create a table for a specific schema, you can write whatever you want. Just say create a table. When I say create table, before I create table, I can see what's the name of the schema. Okay? For example, create table, and the name of the table, I'm going to say test, for example, dot a, something like this, to say a1 integer, okay, something like this. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Whatever, I'm trying to play around here. And then just run my code and see. Okay, if you check the schema, you can see where the schema can be generated. If you check here, refresh, you see the table can be generated here within the schema. There's a test. You see, it's not in the public. So now, if you have a different schema, the same database, just you need to use the schema name as a prefix dot the name of the table if you try to perform this operation. Okay. Anyway, so we do have, by the way, many ways in order to extract this information of the schema about the database that we have. One of them, I'm just show you different ways here. Of course, I cannot give you everything, but this is a simple way to perform that. This is select, column name, data type, this information from the information schema. With the one way allow us in order to extract the information about the schema or the structure of the data stored in this database. I am interested to get information about the table. Okay, and yeah, just sometimes when you copy paste, maybe get a Yeah. This is give you a schema about the data that's stored here. So you have an ID, name. If you want to store, you're going to see a lot of information here. Can be stored. You're going to keep track. Why you need this information? Because every time to perform SQL query, etc., the database management system needs to find a better way, easy way to access your data. And again, how the database tell, for example, when you select A, B, C from specific relation, whether the A, B, C is really one set of attributes belong to this relation or not, using the schema. Okay? You're going to consult this one. And here you see all the information you're going to store. We have many information. I'm not go over all of them, but at least it gives you many information can be stored here. Okay, so you can extract whatever you want. Okay, I guess that's enough from this part. Let's go back to the slides. So at least you are, hopefully you have an idea what do you mean by the schema. Okay, why you need to have a different schema and etc. Okay, so if you want to get information about the schema using your code, if you're in the for example, in your database, we have a simple query. We can use them in order to extract or get information about the schema. Within the programming language, we need to find out a way how to handle that. Okay? When you work in data, or to get the data about the database, generally speaking here, we're going to use the metadata, which is data about the data. I need the name, for example, the type, the size, and etc. Okay? This is very important. So in order to get information about metadata, so I give you two different ways, or many ways to perform that. For example, assume that I do have a result set, perform query. I didn't know about the structure of the result set that I just received. Remember, when you perform the SQL query, you're going to have like result set, right? Which is going to be a relation. I don't know, for my program, I don't know the structure. I need to more information about the scheme of this result or the result set I just received. Okay? So when you execute the result set, we have another method, okay? We can use, it's called get metadata. This allows me to give me the metadata about the data here, of the result set. Okay, this one is going to be create an object. You have to, when you use this one, you're going to create an object called result set metadata. This means this one will give me what? If you create an object with this one using this method, this allows me in order to extract the information stored there. Okay, I'm not going to spend a long time because we don't use this one. We rarely use this one, but just to give you an idea, you can get, the result set. Okay, you can get the metadata about the data. Okay, when you perform this one, the same thing, after execute, for example, the result set that I have, and the result set that I have, I'm going to say get metadata. I store this one into object of the result set metadata. Then within this object, you can get some information. First, you can use whatever the object that you just generated about the metadata of the result set you just computed. Give me the number of columns that you have. How many columns? 5, 6, 7. Then after that, you can get, for example, get column name, get column type, etc. We have many information here. We can execute. I'm going to show you one slide. They're going to give you more details about this. Whether it's going to be helpful, useful? Yes. It's going to be, for example, I can get the structure of the data that I just received. I can manipulate this one. I can help me that maybe generate another query if you want. This is the command here. And this is, if you want to actually get metadata about the database itself, not about the result set. Really, you need to distinguish two things. When you execute your query, you're going to have result set, right? You can get the metadata for the result set. When you connect to the database, you can retrieve the metadata about the database itself in general, everything about the database. What kind of information? You can tell me what the database software installed there, the version, okay? You can tell me how many tables stored there, number of tuples, etc. More details, which you can give me all the primary key, all the tuples in this relation, in this database, etc. So you can get more details. Have too many methods, okay? This is one example. Sometimes when you understand, you try to have access to data, you know that you need to consult the manual to get more details. So you notice here, we have, in order to get the columns, for example, if you get some information, I need to have, retrieve the description of the tables, columns available in specific catalog or specific data. So this is the command that I can use here, okay? You see that we have many, columns that we have many data. You can retrieve them. I didn't need all of them, okay? I need just, for example, the name of the column for a specific relation for a specific, let's say, schema or on a specific catalog, on a specific schema. If you have a multiple schema, assume the catalog you have in many. You see, they need to specify what the catalog you have. Most of the case, as I mentioned here, you can use null or empty in order to specify whether it's gonna have a specific catalog or not. Generally speaking, I'm gonna say all the catalogs that exist in the system. They are not specified specific catalog. You can specify specific schema if you want. If you have a schema pattern, or you leave this one blank, that means, or null, that means a schema is not going to be part of the result. I'm not going to insert or use the schema here in general. Actually, yeah, if you pass null, that means if you don't want to use the catalog or the schema to narrow the search, okay? Double quotation, that means pass this one in order to get the description of the column of table with no catalog, the one that doesn't have catalog, okay? The same thing with the schema. You can tell, for example, with the table, with the relation, and you can give me this pattern, the relation that starts, for example, with the letter A or B, or the first letter, I'm not sure, I know only the third or the fourth, for example, or contains only three letters, and etc. Regular expression that we use for the like, if you remember. And here we can have specific column if you want, okay? And this is the command. You connect. I'm thinking about the database. I'm not interested for a result set about the database. When you connect to the database, you can get information about the schema or the metadata about this database. What I'm interested in, I need to find all the column that, or to say, stored in this relation. Here I specify for the instructor. If I didn't specify the instructor, they say, for example, here, that's me for every single tuple or every single relation in this database. Okay, here, since it says instructor, how about the column? Which column you need to perform? When you say, remember, this 1%, that means 0 or more character. So it means any name, any column stored there. And here you can get the information, for example, the column size, the location, position for the first, the second, the third, this give you the actual location, what the data type, and etc. All this information, you can use this one after you ask in order to retrieve whatever you want. I think I don't need to go over more details, but just to give you, metadata about the data here. Another thing you can get to say, the primary key of the relation, if you want. You can get, for example, a specific table, more details about this one. And the same thing we're going to perform here to find out the list of tables in the database. Another, get me only the tables, not the details about the actual columns, more details. Okay, just here about the tables in general. And you can specify, for example, we have two different types of tables or relational database. The one that's system tables or relation that built by or created by the system. Okay, in order to help this database management system, you're gonna find a better way in order to execute the command, etc. The other kind of the tables or relation that the user that you generated. So you can specify whether you're gonna include it or not. If you want to find the primary key, we have a method after you perform the result set. Now we wanted to get the primary key of the result set you just received. You can use the get primary key. Okay, that's why I talk about the catalog schema, etc. Because we're gonna use them a lot here. And this is just a command that allow you, for example, get the primary key of the instructor. Yeah, after you connect. So must be have the perform the command, and this one must be returned as a result set to allow you in order to extract the data that you're looking for. Okay. That's all about the metadata. Okay. You are rarely use this one, but keep in your mind you still being able to have a chance, a way in order to extract the schema if you want from your code. Okay. The other thing we need to look at the transaction. We talk about the transaction, okay? Within using the JDBC, we can say, for example, the set first you just to disable, turn off the automatic commit on the connection, because as you mentioned, by default, every command is gonna be executed, gonna be permanent, it's gonna be executed, it's gonna be like commit. I don't want to do this one if you want to perform the transaction. Remember, transaction is like a block of the data. Specify this one, start with this point, end to this point. Then at the end, you can specify whether you're gonna make the change permanent or to say undo or undo whatever I have done. Okay, cancel whatever I said. You can turn on again the automatic commit. If you do this one true, that means starting from this point, any SQL command executed is going to be permanent. Okay? We do have other features, for example, JDBC allow you in order to handle the large object, the character or the binary large object. Okay? As I mentioned in today's lecture, I show you that there's a file. I expect from you to take a look if you want to deal with images. Okay? The Postgres doesn't have blob data type. They have byte A type data type in order to store the large binary value or number. And they don't have a club, they have text. Okay, instead, in order to store the character or large object. Okay, so an example that show you is already uploaded in Blackboard. You can go over this one. It's easy. Show you the way that how handle this situation. If you are familiar with the file system, how to handle file using Java. Remember, we studied this one in the CS116, right? And 15. When you teach you this, access the data, they said, if you try to access the file, one way to access the file is use a binary. Yeah, you carry the data as a byte. So the same thing, you open the file, then extract the data as a byte, stored either in the data, or we can retrieve the data from the file. So all the commands are there. You can use them. You can go over the tutorial for the Oracle website in order to get more details, but I give you like a sample code. You can use them if you wanted to store image in your file. There's another thing to handle the image in your database. In this case, I'm not going to store the image as the binary data. You can say, for example, ID, and you say image. Okay, and image is going to be like char. And here in this case, I'm going to start... when you have an image associated with every user, let's say the image, I'm going to say image 1 stored in this file, image 2, and etc. When you store this information in the file, I'm not going to store the image as a binary. I'm going to just store the path or the location of the image. For example, this one is going to be C, for example, images, or image, img. Then after that, say image 1. So, or maybe the folder or the path gonna be fixed. The only thing you need to store only the image name here in the name. So use this one as a normal attribute as a string. Then when we try to retrieve the data here, the only thing you need to perform what? Find the location, then just display the image. And you know how to display the image, use GUI, okay? You create a whatever component which allow you in order just access this image, you can display. This one easy way to do that if you don't want to store the data on the let's say the as an attribute of the large let's say binary large object. We have more resource. I advise you to take a look. And remember, don't stop working the database by the end of this class. You still have a chance to learn more. Okay, I give you just the introduction. Just give you the basis. Okay, the baby steps. Yeah, action. In order to understand how to work with the database, and the rest is going to be depends on you. You have to learn more, and we have many resources. If you want to learn more about the JDBC of the Postgres, this is the one interesting link. Okay, if you want to learn about more the Postgres database connecting more details with the Java, etc., there's another link. I believe I like this link. Postgres tutorial, one of the best websites that I found that have tutorial about the Postgres. Okay? Thanks, guys. That's all. See you next week.